So I recently went through something no soldier should ever come home to. Not an injury, not a flag folded in silence, but something quieter, colder. My house was gone, rented out. Taken by the very HOA I was paying fees to while I was still deployed overseas. They called it abandonment. They called it procedure. But really, it was theft dressed in a polo shirt and a clipboard. The strangest part? I didn't even make it to the porch before I knew something was wrong. Combat teaches you that. You notice the little things, patterns. My grass was cut. Now that might sound like nothing, but when you've left for a combat zone with weeds knee-high and a busted sprinkler that squealed every third cycle, you expect to come back to the same chaos. Instead, the hedges were trimmed. The sidewalk pressure-washed. The whole place looked like it had just been staged for an open house on Zillow. There was even a brand new welcome mat. Bright, chirpy letters, live, laugh, love, but that wasn't ours. Ours said something different. A joke. Come back with a warrant. I froze, not panic, just calculation. Something had shifted, like finding your toothbrush moved half an inch to the left. Except this time it wasn't a toothbrush. It was my entire life. Then I saw it. A red Tesla in the driveway, parked like it belonged. Not temporary, not uncertain, confident. Like the driver believed they'd been invited, that my home had always been theirs. My chest tightened, not from rage, but from the kind of silence that comes before a firefight. Wind chimes rattled in the breeze. My wife hated wind chimes. I stepped closer, quiet, controlled. Through the side window, I spotted movement. Someone walking barefoot down my hall, a smoothie in hand, jazz music playing. Not the real kind. The playlist kind. The kind you hear when someone's updating their travel blog and sipping cold brew. And then the door swung open before I even knocked. He was young, early 30s, flip-flops, aviators pushed on top of his head. He raised his glass like it was a shield. "Can I help you?" he asked, casual. Like I was the mailman, like I was lost. I didn't speak at first. I just stared because my brain wasn't confused, it was calculating. I'd been dropped into firefights with less warning than this. Finally, I said, low, steady, "This is my house." He tilted his head, golden retriever style. I don't think so, man." My hand found my key ring, the one I'd carried across 2 continents, 7 airports, even past 1 IED blast. I slid it into the lock. It didn't turn. "Dude," he said, stepping back just slightly. "If you're looking for the leasing office, maybe call the HOA. We signed everything through them." His name was Zach. Of course it was. I almost laughed. Almost. And then the black SUV rolled up. No sirens, no lights, just smug and silent with glossy letters across the side, Community Safety Enforcement. 2 men stepped out in khakis and navy polos, tactical vests that had probably never seen combat beyond a spill in the clubhouse kitchen. "Sir," one said, fake authority dripping in his voice, "we're going to need you to step away from the residence." "This is my house," I repeated harder this time. "The tenants have signed paperwork," the second one cut in. "This is now an HOA-managed leasehold. You are trespassing." And then, like her name had been summoned by her own arrogance, Karen appeared. Clipboard, beige visor, oversized sunglasses reflecting back a distorted version of me. She smiled like she had rehearsed it in the mirror. "Oh," she said, "you're early." I froze early. "You weren't scheduled to return until Q4. That's what your wife's last message said." My jaw locked. I was scheduled. I was deployed. Karen didn't flinch. "And we thank you for your service. But under Bylaw 14C, homes left unoccupied for over 90 days without documented maintenance or direct contact are subject to board reassignment." "Reassignment," I repeated. She nodded toward Zach, who was still sipping his smoothie in my foyer. "We placed a tenant temporarily just to ensure the property remained in circulation." "You mean you rented out my home?" "We protected the community," she said flatly. "It's not personal." I swallowed the heat rising in my chest. "Did you receive my deployment waiver?" For a split second, she twitched. Then the smile returned. "Must have been a clerical error. Regardless, you'll have a chance to contest the board's actions at the next monthly meeting." Let me get this straight. While I was in another country serving this one, they had changed my locks, leased my house, filled it with strangers. And now they were telling me to wait politely for a board meeting. Karen's voice sharpened. Until then, please leave the property. The guard stepped closer. Not violent, just pressure, the kind that waits to see how far you'll bend. Through the doorway, I caught a glimpse of my wife's framed deployment photo still hanging near the kitchen. They hadn't even taken it down. And Zach, still sipping his smoothie, raised his cup and waved. That's when I felt it, the key in my palm digging into my skin. My hand clenched so hard I could have snapped it in two. Instead, I slipped it back into my pocket, turned, walked, sat in my rental car, eyes forward, not defeated, not yet. Just calculating. I didn't call a lawyer. Not then. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts until I found a number I hadn't used in years. A number I only reached out to when someone tried to make me feel powerless. I sent one word, ready. The reply came in 2 seconds, always. And in that moment, it wasn't about calling for help. It was about calling for backup. The smell of motel carpet never really leaves you. It's like sadness soaked into polyester, clinging to everything. That's what I noticed first when I woke up the next morning, along with the boots lined up at the foot of the bed. One on standby, one half untied. Like I was waiting for the next mission brief. Like I hadn't really come home at all. Coffee? My wife asked softly. I nodded. She handed me the cup like it was fragile, like I was fragile. The kids were still asleep. At least I hoped they were. Our son barely spoke anymore, his hoodie pulled over his head like armor. He sat that way even in sleep, as if hiding from the world. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. While they rested, I worked. Laptop open, eyes bloodshot. Dozens of HOA bylaws, zoning codes, board meeting notes flashing across the screen. My fingers flew, scrolling faster, digging deeper. And then I found it. Buried in a draft update. Revision D, Community Vitality Addendum. Bylaw 14C, Section 3. Properties deemed non-contributive to visual or environmental health standards for a period exceeding 90 days may be reassigned to provisional board control pending occupancy. Legal jargon, but the meaning was simple. If we don't like how your yard looks and you're not here to stop us, we take your house. And the kicker, that bylaw was backdated, filed after I left, signed during what they called an emergency proxy quorum. No public notice, no neighborhood vote, just a handful of signatures, and the top one belonged to Karen. I scrolled through the meeting minutes. My stomach tightened when I read her handwritten note. This should help solve the Spruce Lane issue. Spruce Lane, that was me. To her, I wasn't a neighbor. I wasn't a man with a family. I was an issue. I closed the laptop and stepped outside for air. But fresh air doesn't erase betrayal. It only sharpens it. Across the parking lot, I spotted him, the younger of the two HOA guards from yesterday, standing by a pickup, laughing on the phone. I moved closer, quiet, slow. He didn't see me, just kept talking. Yeah, the guy showed up early, freaked out, thought he was gonna go full Rambo. He laughed, paused. Nah, Karen handled it, said he checked out of the neighborhood long before he ever left. My blood went cold. That wasn't procedure, that was personal. He turned, saw me, the smile faltered. You stalking us now? He asked, suddenly nervous. I walked right up, close enough to see sweat bead at his collar. My voice was even. You tell Karen that if she wants to quote me, she should try saying it to my face. His mouth opened, but I was already walking away. Later that day, we drove by the house. Our son asked to see his room. We didn't stop, didn't go in, just slowed the car enough for him to look, his forehead pressed to the glass, his eyes locked on the window that used to be his. His posters were gone, the telescope too, the walls painted over, and in the corner a dog bed for someone else's pet. Is it still our house? He whispered. I couldn't answer. I wanted to say yes, but the lie stuck in my throat. That night back in the motel, my wife found me hunched over the laptop again. You okay? She asked. I shook my head. I've had insurgents lie to my face. I've had generals feed me false intel. But I never thought it'd be a clipboard in a neighborhood newsletter that got me. She sat beside me. What do we do? We build the file, I said. Track every vote, every signature, every dollar. My eyes burned as I stared at the screen. And then we take back what's ours. The next morning, I walked into the HOA office. Not angry, not loud, calm, a GoPro clipped under my shirt. I looked like a man there to buy a condo. Karen was chatting with a realtor inside. She didn't even notice me at first. I walked straight to the bulletin board, and there it was, a printed copy of Bylaw 14C dated, signed, stamped. I snapped a photo, then I leaned close enough that only she could hear me. You should be careful who you write laws for. Her smile twitched. For a moment the mask slipped. Before she could respond, someone else walked in. Mrs. Delaney, the widow from the corner lot. She looked at me, then at Karen. Her voice trembled, but it carried weight. You did get his deployment notice, didn't you? Karen froze. You told me you had it on file, Mrs. Delaney said louder now, her cane tapping the floor like a gavel. I asked you about it, and you said he wasn't coming back soon enough to matter. The silence cracked like glass. Karen's smile vanished. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I turned and walked out, because Mrs. Delaney had just given me something I couldn't buy. A witness. And Karen didn't know it yet, but that one sentence had turned a neighborhood squabble into a war she couldn't win in silence. There's a kind of silence in a motel room that doesn't heal you. It doesn't comfort you. It judges you. It hums in the walls like the air itself is asking why you haven't fought back harder. That's the silence I sat in after Mrs. Delaney shattered Karen's mask. My son slept buried under blankets as if the world couldn't reach him there. My wife stared at the ceiling, looking for answers that didn't exist. And me? I sat in the chair, one boot on, one boot off, staring at the glow of my laptop. On the screen, the HOA charter mocked me. Line after line of bylaws written to box me out of my own life. Then a notice popped up, cease and desist, unauthorized surveillance. Surveillance because I wore a GoPro into their office. They were baiting me, prodding me, hoping I'd slip. I grabbed my keys. Where are you going? My wife asked. Out. Out where? I didn't answer. I couldn't, because the war wasn't on a battlefield anymore. It was on my street. I parked across from my own house, killed the engine, let the shadows swallow me. From that angle, I could see the living room light glowing through the window. 15 minutes passed, then 20. A man appeared, probably Ron, one of the new tenants. He carried something heavy. My chest clenched when I saw what it was, a bookshelf, not just any shelf. The one I had built years ago with my own hands. Real wood, sanded, stained. Hours of sweat sunk into it. And he dumped it on the curb, like trash. I got out of the car and crossed the street. Quiet, controlled, the kind of stillness you only learn in combat zones. Hey, I called. He turned. For a moment, fear flickered in his eyes. Maybe he thought I was a ghost. Hi, he stammered, hands half raised. Look, I don't want trouble. Karen said you were. Karen said what? My voice cut him off. That you vacated, that the HOA reclaimed it, that, he hesitated, that it wasn't really your home anymore. I pointed at the shelf. That yours? He swallowed hard. It's a little busted, so That belonged to my son. Silence, guilt flickered across his face. Hey, I'm sorry, he said. I didn't. I stepped closer, inches away now. You don't throw away someone else's life just because it looks broken to you. That shelf held up when nothing else did. You think you're making room, but you're erasing us. He nodded quickly, backed up. I'm sorry. Then get inside. He obeyed, and I stood in the yard that used to be mine, my heart pounding not from rage, but from restraint. Because a younger version of me wouldn't have stopped at a warning. That version came out once in Kandahar when a convoy was hit, when hesitation meant death. That version had pulled the trigger to save lives. Right call, wrong feeling. And I had carried the weight of it ever since. I couldn't let that version decide this fight. Back at the motel, my wife was waiting at the tiny table, her eyes locked on me. You okay? No, I said. You going to tell me what happened? They threw out his bookshelf. She didn't speak, just nodded, slowly. Like she understood that this wasn't about wood and nails, it was about erasure. Then she asked the question that changed everything. So, what's the plan? I met her eyes. For the first time in days, I gave her the real answer. I'm calling in the team. She didn't flinch, she didn't beg me not to. Instead, she poured us both coffee. They'll need rooms, she said, and space to stage. I stared at her. I'll handle it. She gave me a small, steady smile. And that's when I realized something. She wasn't scared anymore. She was ready. The next morning, I hit the thread. A simple message. Muster at 1800, staging far lot behind Shell Station. One reply came back, then another, then a dozen, some from numbers I hadn't seen in years. Everyone carried the same single word, copy. By sundown, it was no longer just me. It wasn't a family fight. It wasn't an HOA squabble. It was an operation. And this time, I wasn't showing up alone. I always thought reunions were supposed to feel warm, familiar, maybe even comforting. This one didn't. This one felt like the last calm breath before a detonation. They started arriving just after 1800 hours. Quiet, no cheers, no backslaps, just nods, handshakes, eyes that had seen too much. Each man carried the same thing, purpose. Ramos was first, still built like a linebacker crossed with a bulldozer, his voice rumbling like gravel. "Where's the problem?" he asked. I pointed to the neighborhood across the road. "You're standing on it." We staged in the Shell Station lot, too public for real planning, but just enough to mask what was happening. Then we moved into the real war room, a shuttered vape shop I'd rented under an LLC weeks before I even knew I'd need it. Old instinct, maybe. Yates unrolled the SAT map across a folding table. Bowen set up routers and screens. Davis, calm as death itself, unloaded a duffel bag that would give TSA nightmares. "You brought the noise?" I asked him. "Always," he said with a grin. But there was no joy in the room, just justice. I dropped a marker onto the map. "This is Alpha, primary objective, the house. Secondary, HOA office across the block. Leave it untouched unless absolutely necessary." "You think she's hiding something there?" Ramos asked. "Probably," I said. "But priority is visibility, proof, presence. We control the narrative." Yates tapped the layout. "She's got cameras, porch, fence, cloud storage. Whole place is wired." "I can reroute feeds," Bowen muttered, "but you'll lose real time." "I don't need real time," I said. "I need her off balance." The door creaked, a figure stepped in, Reed. He hadn't spoken to me in years, not since the tribunal. He set a go bag down, stared me dead in the eye. "Before we start," he said, "I need to know one thing. This isn't just revenge, right?" I held his stare. "No." "You sure?" I didn't blink. "This isn't revenge, it's a homecoming." He studied me for a long beat, then he nodded once. "Good enough." We broke into teams. Davis and Ramos, decoy and containment. Bowen and Yates, digital infiltration. Reed and me, point entry, narrative control. We weren't carrying plates. No insignia, no rifles. Not this time. This wasn't war. It was reclamation. But something gnawed at me. That voice from Kandahar, the memory of pulling the trigger too soon, the life I couldn't save. Bowen noticed the crack, pulled me aside. "You good?" "No," I admitted. "You need to be. One wrong step and it's federal." "I know." "I'm not worried about her," he said quietly. "I'm worried about you." Halfway through the briefing, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no caller ID. I answered, silence, then a voice, calm, cool, Karen. "You're trespassing," she said. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Because I just filed an injunction with Judge Haverson. You know him, old neighbor of yours. His daughter sits on our board." Her voice dripped smugness. "Now you're scared." "No," I said flatly. "Good, because I'm connected. I'm patient. Bring your little army buddies. I'll be waiting with paperwork." The line went dead. I turned back to the team. "She knows." Ramos cracked his knuckles. "Then we do this cleaner, smarter. We've got less than 48 hours. "She's trying to flip the house legally," I said. "Transfer title under a fake abandonment clause." "Clerk's in her pocket," Yates grunted. "No, she married his cousin." The room went silent. Then Davis from the corner asked, "So what's the move?" I walked to the crate in the corner, pulled out a folded flag. Inside it my uniform, not a trophy, a reminder. I held it up. She disrespected this, not me, not us, this. Reed stepped forward, rested a hand on the fabric. Then let's take it back with honor. That sealed it. Before we broke, I looked every man in the eye. Karen thinks this is a game. She thinks we're here to scare her. She's wrong. We're here to remind her some people still protect what's theirs. They nodded, silent, focused. But at 600 sharp, when we moved out, it was Karen who came for us. It was the sheriff. And he had our names on a list. 600 hours, Operation Homecoming. We moved like civilians, not soldiers. No plates, no rifles, just backpacks and cameras, every step legal, every word documented. On the outside, we looked like neighbors heading to a yard sale. But inside, every man carried the same weight, the line we couldn't let her cross. Halfway down the block, a squad car pulled up. No lights, no sirens, just slow, intentional, like a predator circling prey that didn't even know it was caught. Another car followed, different model, no markings, but Ramos squinted at the tires and muttered, "County, Sheriff's Office, look at the wear." We held our ground. The doors opened. Sheriff Blaine stepped out first. Sunglasses, clipboard, calm, almost too calm. Behind him, a younger deputy, Nunez. His hand twitched near his belt. Trigger-happy or nervous, maybe both. "Gentlemen," Blaine said, walking forward like he was inspecting pest control. "You want to tell me why 6 military-age males are coordinating outside a residential home at dawn?" I raised both hands casually. No weapons, no threats, we're reclaiming property legally. That's when her SUV rolled up, right on cue. Karen stepped out like it was a stage entrance. Neutral tones, manicured nails, holding a thermos like it was champagne. Her smile was brighter than the morning sun, but sharper than glass. "You're trespassing," she said, loud enough for the deputy to hear. "This is harassment." I ignored her, my eyes locked on Blaine. "You've seen the deed, you've seen what she filed." He nodded slowly. "Emergency property control transfer, based on HOA abandonment clause." "Which is fake," I snapped. "Not my call," he said. He gestured toward Nunez. That's when the deputy reached for his cuffs. Davis stepped forward, smooth as steel. "Sir, any physical contact without a formal arrest will be interpreted as excessive force. We're recording under state civil code." Nunez froze, Blaine hesitated. "Back off, deputy." Nunez obeyed, but barely. Karen's smile widened. She could smell the crack. "You see, you're not in uniform now, you're just angry men trespassing." I walked right up to her, close enough to catch the perfume she probably wore like armor. My voice was low. "You really filed an abandonment clause after forging the timestamp on my deployment papers?" For one heartbeat, she flinched, then her mask slid back on. "Prove it." I tapped my earpiece. "Bowen, now." Across the street, Bowen sent the signal. We weren't just filming, we were streaming. A private link public enough to count, private enough to kill if needed. And there it was. On screen, footage from an HOA board meeting. Karen's voice clear as day. "He's not coming back, and if he does, we'll make sure it's not his home anymore." The sheriff's jaw tightened. I handed him a flash drive. "There's more, property records, tampered meeting minutes. Check the IP edits on the charter, they all route back to her house." Karen's face hardened. "Slander, you're all just thugs with internet access." But her hand, it was shaking. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number, I answered. A woman's voice, calm, professional. "You're about to be served." "What?" "Federal injunction, IRS tax fraud, illegal rental income hidden under falsified HOA filings." I blinked. "Who are you?" She hung up. I turned. Karen was already dialing her phone, lips curved in a smug smile like she had just landed her final blow. But something in my gut told me this wasn't about her anymore. This was bigger, dirtier. Ramos leaned in. "You all right?" "No," I muttered. I've seen that look, he said. Afghanistan market blast, civilians screaming, you still got us out. I met his eyes. He wasn't wrong. That look didn't mean I was breaking. It meant the other side was scared. And scared people always make mistakes. Later that night, I combed through the footage again, and in the background of one HOA clip I saw him. A man in a suit, laughing with Karen, whispering in her ear like she was his newest project. My stomach dropped. Redford, my old retired, the man who used to lecture us about honor, the man I trusted with my life. And that's when I realized Karen was never the final boss. She was just the distraction. The real enemy was sitting in an office, smiling and pulling the strings. Redford's face on that recording hit me harder than any firefight ever had. Not because it was violent, but because it confirmed what I already feared. Karen wasn't running the show. She was a pawn, a loud, reckless, clipboard-wielding pawn. The real power sat behind a desk, smiling in a suit. Redford, my former the man who used to preach about honor, ethics, and the chain of command. The same man who signed off on the clause that didn't exist until after I deployed, abandonment of property due to deployment. It was his phrasing, his fingerprints, his betrayal. I told the team at the motel that night. My wife sat cross-legged on the bed, yellow legal pad in her lap. She didn't even look surprised. Karen thinks she's clever, she said. But Redford, he's sloppy, arrogant. That's a crack we can wedge open. Bowen was already typing. I'm pulling 18 months of HOA digital logs. If he touched anything, I'll find it. Hours later, he struck gold. Buried deep inside the server logs, one username, Redford Compliance Admin. He wasn't even hiding it, because men like him don't believe anyone will look. At 3 a.m., I paced the parking lot with a notepad. Each page had a name, each name a position, each position a weak spot. Zoning director up for re-election. HOA treasurer who filed bankruptcy last year. Even Sheriff Blaine under internal review for excessive force. They weren't bulletproof, just underexposed. The next day the team went dark, phones off, radio silent, except Bowen. He stayed behind building what we called the kill packet. It was everything. Forensic timestamps on the charter edits. IRS filings showing undeclared rental income under Karen's LLC. Security footage of her falsifying meeting times. A list of tenants scammed into paying above market rates. And Redford's signature woven through it all like poison threads. I uploaded the packet to a secure cloud. Sent links to the district court, the state housing commission, even a JAG officer I still trusted. Each email ended with the same line. A house was stolen while a soldier served his country. How many others? But the move that really broke them, we mailed a physical copy straight to Karen's doorstep, certified, signature required. That night we sat in the truck and watched from across the street. When she opened the envelope, her face collapsed, like someone had handed her a grenade with the pin half pulled. She bolted inside, forgetting to even shut the door. The retaliation came fast. Ramos got pulled over twice in one day. Suspicious vehicle, noise violation. Then he got served a restraining order filed by Karen. She claimed he threatened her verbally. We had footage proving he hadn't even spoken to her. Didn't matter. On paper, he was banned from coming within 500 feet of the subdivision. I'll sit out, Ramos said quietly. This is bigger than me. You're part of this, I told him, but inside I was boiling. Karen wasn't just throwing punches. She was bleeding our team from the edges. She's isolating you, my wife said. Divide the team, shake your focus. I shook my head. She doesn't know me. No, she corrected. She doesn't know us. 2 days later, we got a tip. Anonymous number, female voice. Check the city planning board agenda, page 3. We did. And there it was, a proposal for property acquisition zoning shift. Urgent. Filed by Karen's LLC. Targeting abandoned properties for conversion into short-term rentals. And highlighted in red, my house. But the line item told a darker story. Sold pending approval to Redford's holding company. My pulse pounded. It wasn't about my home anymore. My house wasn't the prize, it was bait, a piece in a larger machine. And the machine was built by men like Redford, using Karen as the hammer. Later, Bowen dug deeper, and one name kept surfacing at the bottom of every fraudulent transfer: Edgar L. Monroe, HOA treasurer, former real estate broker. He hadn't been at a single board meeting I'd attended, but his signature was everywhere, every illegal lease, every falsified transfer. Bowen looked up from his laptop, eyes dark. Monroe's not complicit, he's the architect. How many homes? I asked. 9, he said. That we know of, all military, 3 still deployed, 2 in VA hospitals. 1, his voice caught. 1 died in combat last year. They reclaimed his house 2 months after. The silence that followed was volcanic. Amanda, one of the tenants, whispered it like a confession. She told us his family had walked away from it. Something inside me tore open. This wasn't theft. This was looting the homes of soldiers who couldn't fight back. I stared at the table, hands shaking. I don't just want Karen exposed, I want Monroe finished. Ramos cracked his knuckles. How hard? I looked up, voice steady. No weapons, no threats, just truth, louder than a bullet. And for the first time in weeks, the team smiled. Not out of joy, but because we had found the real target. This wasn't about reclaiming my house anymore. It was about burning their empire to the ground. It started with a siren. Not a frantic wail, just one long, low note drifting through the night like a warning shot. It cut through me like a flashbang, not because I was scared, but because I knew what was coming. Karen was playing her final card. I stepped out onto the lawn of my own house, porch light buzzing overhead. The air felt heavy, charged. 2 cruisers rolled in, high beams sweeping across the driveway like searchlights. 1 officer stepped out. The other stayed in the car, scanning the shadows. Across the street, Karen stood with her sister, flanked by a clipboard-wielding HOA crony who looked like he'd auditioned for assistant villain. Her smile stretched wide, too wide. "Sir," the cop said, hand resting on his vest, "we received a report of property trespass and possible threats against residents." I didn't blink. Was that complaint by a woman named Karen by any chance? He hesitated, didn't answer, just glanced back toward the car, script already written. I held up a folder. Deed, footage, active complaint filed with the housing authority. You really want to open this box, officer? Karen snapped. He's lying, he threatened me. He brought military weapons into a suburban neighborhood. The second officer finally stepped out, his jaw twitching with disbelief. You got proof of that, ma'am? Karen pulled out her phone. Right here, I've got emails. The officer scanned the screen, frowned. Ma'am, this is a screenshot of Google Street View. From 2021, you emailed it to yourself. Her face went from red to white to feral. You're all in on it. This is a coup. He's stolen valor. Neighbors started gathering, coffee mugs in hand, phones out. Mrs. Delaney parked her lawn chair at the curb, cane gripped like a gavel. This is better than Netflix, her husband muttered. The officer returned my folder, calm but firm. That's a civil issue. If you want to pursue it in court, that's your right. You're useless, Karen screamed. And then she snapped. She stormed across the street and onto my lawn, finger stabbing the air. You think you've won? I own this neighborhood. Your little platoon tricks won't work here. You're trespassing, I said loud enough for every camera to hear. On record, on camera. She froze. Bowen, standing on the porch, raised a hand. Smile, Karen, you're trending. The crowd erupted with laughter, phones lifted higher. Karen's mask cracked. She stormed away, muttering, but she wasn't done, not by a long shot. At 3:14 a.m., Bowen's system picked up motion. We watched live as Karen crept across the yard in slippers, Redford at her side with a crowbar. She carried a flash drive, hands shaking. They tried to bypass the lock, triggered the alarm. We watched them ransack my son's room, drawers yanked, keepsakes scattered. She wasn't looking for valuables. She was hunting for the kill packet. Police rolled up mid-burglary. Redford froze. Karen bolted. When they cuffed her, she shrieked, I'm the HOA president. I was checking on tenants. I had concerns. The officer didn't even look at her. Ma'am, you're not law enforcement, and you have no right to enter. Ramos muttered from the shadows, slippers, perfect. Karen was shoved into the back of the cruiser, mascara streaking like war paint, her screams muffled by the glass. Redford didn't say a word. He just stared at the ground, shoulders slumped. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But the war wasn't over. Because the renters started talking. Not just with apologies, but with receipts. 6 more families, all military, all targeted by Karen and Monroe's scheme. Bowen's audit logs connected the dots. Monroe had been rerouting HOA funds into his own investment firm. Karen wasn't the mastermind. She was the hammer. Monroe was the architect. The next morning, subpoenas dropped, not at Karen's house, at Monroe's. We watched from the truck as officers walked him out in cuffs. He didn't resist, didn't argue, just muttered one thing as they shoved him into the cruiser. HOAs are fortresses, you'll never win. I leaned close. Then I guess it's time for siege tactics. But Monroe wasn't wrong. What he built wasn't just theft, it was an empire, legal on paper, criminal in practice. And if we stopped here, others would build it back again. The house wasn't the prize, it was bait. And the war had just moved to a bigger board. The strange thing about winning a war is how quiet it feels. No parades, no banners, just silence. Karen's scream still echoed in my head as the cruiser took her away. But the real fight wasn't ending with her in cuffs. The subpoenas on Monroe's desk said so. His empire, built on forged signatures, fraudulent transfers, and stolen homes, was crumbling. The DA's office moved fast. Faster than I thought they would. Maybe it was the kill packet. Maybe it was the viral video. Or maybe it was the sheer audacity of stealing from soldiers who couldn't fight back. Karen's trial came first. She stood in court alone. Her lawyer had withdrawn after the fraud inquiry bled her dry. Her hair was unwashed, her smile gone. She tried to argue, tried to charm. But every bylaw, every clerical error, every forged timestamp was laid bare in front of her. When the verdict came, it was swift. Guilty, 8 years minimum, restitution pending, her car seized, her accounts frozen, her condo repossessed. The HOA disbanded that same week. Assets redistributed. Every homeowner in the community received a payout, including me. But none of that mattered when I walked through my front door again. The grass was wild, the porch light buzzing, the room still echoing with someone else's life. But it was mine. Our son sat on the floor where his telescope used to be. My wife leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. And for the first time since I'd come home, the house felt like more than walls. It felt like possibility. I thought that was the end. Until the mailbox creaked. Inside, a white envelope, no return address. One word across the front, appeal. My throat went dry as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note, no punctuation, no flourish, just a sentence. You didn't win. You just got lucky. And taped to the back a key. Rusted, faded Sharpie on the tag, Unit 13. But there was no Unit 13 in this subdivision. No record, no blueprint. Except there was. Buried deep in a county archive, I found it. A storm shelter sealed off 14 years ago. Abandoned, forgotten, except by Karen. Ramos and I went in clean. Bolt cutters, gloves, crowbar. The hatch groaned open with a metallic wail. The air inside smelled like copper and gilt. 4 crates, a rusted desk, and a shoebox marked in block letters, board assets, do not destroy. Inside were ledgers, forged votes, surveillance logs, funds rerouted to personal accounts, photos of every family they'd targeted, and dozens of email printouts. One dated just 2 weeks before I came home read, "I don't care if he's active duty, he left. That makes him fair game." Karen's words, in black and white. I boxed it all, drove straight to the state attorney's office, dropped it on the counter. Tell them it's time. 48 hours later, Karen was arrested again. This time no slippers, no clipboard, just cuffs and cameras. The charges stacked higher: fraud, forgery, targeted discrimination, embezzlement. She tried to smile, but when she saw me across the street, the mask broke. For the first time, she looked afraid. The trial shredded her line by line. They found 4 more families like mine, soldiers deployed, homes stolen, lives gutted. Karen hadn't just abused power. She built an empire on the backs of people who couldn't fight back. And now it was over. 8 years minimum, restitution ordered, HOA funds seized, Monroe indicted. Redford's name dragged through court filings, the board disbanded. Some battles end with gunfire. This one ended with paperwork. Weeks later, I sat on my porch. The grass was wild again, just how I liked it. Max, our dog, sprawled at my feet. The house was quiet. For the first time, I was too. Mrs. Delaney knocked. She handed me cookies and a folded envelope. Found this in my mailbox. Think it's yours. Inside was a check from the State Relief Fund. And a note. Thank you for showing us we don't have to be afraid of them anymore. I closed my eyes. For the first time, it sank in. We hadn't just won, we changed the rules. I scratched behind Max's ears, whispered, "We're good now, buddy." Because for once, we were. There are 1,000 ways to serve your country. Some wear boots on foreign soil. Others fight from their porch against a clipboard, a smirk, and a bylaw. But in the end, justice is louder than any HOA notice.